There's word Syrian troops are gearing up for what could be one of the bloodiest battles yet in the proxy war, one that has pitted the United States, Saudi Arabia, and Turkey against Russia and Iran. Activists and Syrian state-run media report that government forces and Iranian-backed militants are advancing toward Aleppo with the help of Russian airstrikes, although Pentagon officials say the Syrian regime has overestimated its gains. Now, Aleppo is Syria's largest city and has seen some of the worst violence in Syria's deadly civil war. It is divided between rebel-held areas and areas that are under control of the murderous dictator there, Bashar al-Assad. Officials in Turkey say 10,000 Syrian men, women, children have already gathered near its border to escape the fighting, and some 70,000 more are on the way. The refugee crisis is stunning, and some images to show you of Aleppo in our slideshow today. Would you look at this? Take a close look at this. This is a beautiful city. This is what it looked like before this civil war began, what is now a proxy war between the United States and Russia. That is a gorgeous spot, isn't it? Now look at this. Oh, man, I can mess up anything. Here we go. There it is. Government airstrikes, mortars, barrel bombs have reduced entire sections of this huge city to ruins. Hundreds of thousands of people reportedly trapped in the war-torn city. Here you can see, right here, these are buses stacked one on top of another, and then this is a white sheet that they've put up above. It's draped there to help protect from sniper fire. Another image here, you can see a worker up on top stringing those sheets across, again, to stop the snipers. And here you can see a piece of construction equipment that the rebels have turned into some sort of homemade weapon system. Some video here. Of course, the United States has been supporting those rebels while Russia has been propping up the Assad regime. U.S. officials have repeatedly accused Moscow of targeting the rebels, even though Putin claims he's fighting ISIS. And again, this is what that city in ruins now used to look like before this proxy war between the United States and Russia ended it all, and the civil war there destroyed much of that country. It is mighty sad to see. Tara Mahler is a former military analyst for the CIA. Tara, how do you unwind this? I mean, civil wars normally end with the destruction of one side or the other, or peace talks, and it doesn't look like we're anywhere near either.
Absolutely. How do you unwind this is right. It's absolutely heartbreaking, and this was not a good week. The peace talks that were starting earlier this week have stalled, so there's not being progress on that front. And what you see now is you really do see the Russians ramping up their efforts to help Assad, and you're seeing this take place now with what's going on in Aleppo. And it's going to present both a security problem for Syria, a humanitarian problem for Syria, and for the United States as well.
It's not as if Russia is new in Syria. Russia has had outposts and large influence in Syria for a long time. The thing with Russia now is, and Tara, you know this better than anybody, if Russia loses this side, if they can't allow the dictator there to murder his own people and win this war, Russia's in big trouble.
Absolutely, and it is a little bit more problematic now, even though they've been there for a while, because we're trying to have peace talks. And if you're going to try to have peace talks and the Russians are supposed to be participating, they can't just pay lip service and say they're participating in trying to be helpful to the peace talks if they're continuing to bombard opposition groups that we're trying to bring to the table as part of these discussions, because that's what's going to make peace talks unravel. And usually in peace talks, it's not atypical for them to start and stop, but you also want to try to get some sort of temporary, geographically specific ceasefire in place. You need to get parties to halt, even if temporarily, to get the dialogue started. And, you know, I don't want to be overly pessimistic. They're set to resume at the end of the month, and we've seen peace talks in other countries start and stop, and that's usually it's slow and steady progress. But this week was not good. You don't want to see peace talks start for 2 days, nothing happen, and then break because people are already angry.
And then this word that very soon there will be as many people as would fill Giant Stadium on the border with Turkey, with nowhere to go, with no homes left behind as the fighting's going, and nowhere for these refugees to be. What can the world do?
I know, and it's really easy to sit here, you know, talking about it and not really understand the magnitude. And to put it in perspective, there was drone footage of the third largest city in Syria, and it's just complete devastation. I mean, buildings burnt to the ground.
In homes, we showed those yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And we're not talking about thousands of people trapped in a city. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of people being killed, and we're talking about millions of people being displaced. The drone footage, which is not Aleppo, which was in Homs in Syria, that footage actually, just to give you a sense of the scale, the Washington Post a year ago sort of transposed some of the damage over the city of Manhattan, and it takes up, fairly large swaths of Midtown Manhattan. These are large areas of densely populated areas. I think the city of Aleppo had almost 2 million people in 2004, and a lot of those have been displaced. So this is not a town, this is not a village. These are major cities, and it's a huge problem in terms of refugees as well, which we've been speaking about over the past couple of months. Going into Europe and other places, and there's going to be more of them displaced because of what's going on in the past week in Aleppo.
You mentioned Homs. More than 1 million people live there. There's no glass. There are no homes standing. In a place with, it's very densely built, almost like it would be in Manhattan, except of course much shorter. And every single building down, every single it looks like you would have to just rip it all down and start over somehow. And they have no money. They have no stability, they have no government that works, and millions of people with nowhere to go. It seems like a crisis we're going to be dealing with for decades.
We are. It's a crisis we're going to be dealing with for decades, and people tend to frame it as if it's, either or, humanitarian or security. It's a problem in both realms for the United States and for the region. On the humanitarian front, it's just catastrophically awful and heartbreaking. And on the security side, refugees, if they are not integrated into places, it can be radicalized in refugee camps. And, there's security ramifications for any sort of failed state, whether it be Syria or whether it be Libya, where you're now seeing the administration facing problems with ISIS there as well.
Tara, it's a mighty big mess. It's nice to talk to you. Thank you.
You too. Thank you, Chef.